Hi everyone, this is Farhan. So this is going to be the first recording out of hopefully many more recordings. And this video is going to be an illustrated video, kind of like a screenplay of sorts, based on my latest book, The Anti-Mage. For this part of the series, we will begin with the prequel, which is kind of like the origin story of the main protagonist of the story. So here it is. Hope you all enjoy.
A brisk summer morning ignites the day. The empire of Draxlor begins its slow awakening. Her cities and citizens ascend to their duties and their chores. But the empire has far more to offer than mere walls of stone and veteran mages, for her nature is unequal in beauty. And within such splendors of wilderness, a young orphan named Xander had just celebrated his 17th namesake. He has now reached what many in the Empire call fighting age, and by law he must now make his own way into the world. A young man of olive skin, black hair, and eyes of gold, Xander grew up with tales of Imperial Draxlor and her rich history. Like many his age, he too feels indebted by the Empire's support of the orphanage where he grew up. At long last, he may have the chance to repay such a debt. The orphanage is known as the home of the orphaned heroes. It was a special place for children whose parents served as soldiers for Draxlor, many of whom barely or never knew their fallen heroes. And on this solemn day, Xander bids farewell to the only family he's ever known. As he walked out of the gates to venture out into the unknown, one would normally take a last look of the only place they have ever called home. But not Xander. According to myths, or perhaps just a ridiculous rumor made up by the old matron, whomever looks back onto the orphanage after departing would live short lives, and their children will one day become tenants of this secluded mansion. The world was much bigger than he could possibly imagine. The wide plains, the thunderstruck mountains, and enchanting forests. It was a sight Xander could never imagine even in his wildest dreams. But what provisions he brought can only nourish him for so long before he reaches the nearest village. And hunger was not far from his shadow. After days of traveling aimlessly, his last food rations was depleted, and starvation quickly took hold. Xander now faced new elements he had never known before in his life: hunger and exhaustion. And for the first time, they have claimed him. But fate would not abandon him so easily. An elderly passing by stopped to give his horse water from the nearest river. He found the young orphan unconscious and alone, thinned and growing pale, but still very much alive. The traveler awakened the young orphan, shared with him what food he had, and asked what was a lone young man doing out so far in the north, and not yet eaten by the bears. And so they shared their story. The old man's name was Camden, and in his youth was a trader, but said nothing more of it. Xander told his own story and how he ended up lost in the wilderness. After hearing a rather interesting story. Camden asked what he wanted to do now that he has become man. Xander answered he wasn't entirely sure what he wanted to do, but he felt indebted to the Empire and wanted to repay them somehow. The elder Camden suggested Xander try out for the military academy. Anyone could join. They gave out free uniforms, 3 square meals a day, and a chance to be centurion. Xander was thrilled with the idea of free food and clothes, and considered on giving it a try. Camden pointed the directions for Xander. "Go south," he said, "and keep going until you find the capital city, Vermilion. And perhaps there you will find your place." They waved goodbye and went their separate ways. And while they never said it aloud, each had hopes of seeing one another again someday. As Xander looks out into the horizon, a setting sun, he ponders about Camden's advice into enrolling in the military. He would wonder, what such a life be like? He knows how to hunt, he can run fast, and he can climb steep hills. Perhaps it would even be fun, sleeping in the mud and under the stars. But he asked himself out loud, what's a centurion? Only through the path southwards will he find his answer. It wouldn't be long before Xander reaches the gates of Vermilion for the first time. Even from afar, he could see the towering walls as if he was approaching the base of a mountain. All he could do was drop his jaw and gaze at such a titanic structure. This gate, or if you could even call it that, looked like it was taller than mountains. It was unfathomable to Xander how this man-made structure was, well, man-made. Or perhaps it was built by the gods themselves. Xander asked for directions for this military academy, but the guards scoffed at him and they mocked, "What makes this peasant thinks he can join such a prestigious institution?" Xander merely replied with, "Because it is open to all men." The guard scoffed again and pointed a direction. "Well then, at least you would be good meat for the grinder." The guards laughed as Xander walked away. Finding the military academy was easy enough, as was its enrollment. But Xander would find out very quickly just how wrong he would be about military life once the drills begin. The academy taught the students many things, and Xander was grateful for each of them. There was no discrimination between the classes, the rich and the poor, one's race or one's gender, but it was brutal. Very, very brutal. Many could not bear it, and many would end themselves out of fear, out of pain. It may have been due to his upbringing in the orphanage, or perhaps his being accustomed to the dirt. But Xander found little difficulty during the drills and all the training. The only real difficulty for him would be making friends. That is, if they have survived the week. Okay guys, so that was the end of the very first episode of the Anti-Mage, which is the prequel, right? It's kind of like Xander's origin story. So the next part will be chapter 1. Okay, so it's going to be a little extended off there. And like the prequel, it's going to be illustrated with AI images, okay? But again, voiceover, story,
all 100% mine. So I've also set up my other pages like my Instagram, my YouTube, and my Patreon. All right. So if you guys log on to my Patreon, it's gonna have all the exclusive stuff for my books. Okay, you only be seeing videos like this on TikTok and on my YouTube, but in my Patreon there's gonna be a lot more stuff in there, including hopefully very soon will be coming out the physical hard copies of the book itself. So yeah, log in, sign up to my Patreon, and you will actually get the book. And that's it for now. See you guys in the next chapter.